Put the kettle on, lace up your trainers, leash up the hounds, hand over the kids, get out of the door. We are here with an hour or so of twittering to keep you company, ease those aches and pains, reassure you that setting the bar low is the way to overachieve and hopefully bring a little bit of sparkle and laughter to those cold winter days.
Hopefully a little bit of festivity as well. How many sleeps? 5 sleeps? 5 sleeps, Gary?
We've got a guy in the street who's got a countdown and his kids are so old now, but he keeps it going.
Hi everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Tea and Trails. Flying through the episodes already, counting that. This week we have a brew with the coaches, Trish and Russell, and we talk about race day fueling. I've got a story about fueling for you a bit later as well. A little bit on Gary's TDH, but we're going to dive into that in episode 4 a little bit more. Some epic spine training days from me and an interview with the incredible Elsey Davis, who I love, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to that too. If you're watching this on YouTube, I apologize. My eyes look like something cold in the snow this morning. I'm on cup of tea number 5. Let's not lie, it's been quite a morning.
I've had coffee, lemsip, and now I'm on water.
Lemsip, is that just every morning occurrence?
It feels like at the moment, my goodness, I just got the sniffles. It's classic, isn't it? After you've done although it wasn't a massive day because it was a shorter course, but after you've done a few hours out there, and yeah, it wasn't a social run, the 2-day Helvellyn, which I thought it was going to be. But yeah, easy week for me, generally, last week, apart from the 2-day Helvellyn, and I'm loving the process. The outcome though, every now and again you stand on a start line and it's like, oh shit, I wish I'd done more training. But I think now I've had about a 7 or 8 week taper. So yeah, really loving the time out on the trails with Rex. But yeah, got some big goals for 2023. So I am going to have to knuckle down sooner or later, but not just yet. 2-day Helvellyn, yeah, great couple of days. Classic, there was 4 or 5 of us in a caravan for a bloke, so it was not the...
Oh, I can only imagine the smell of a caravan.
I think it was mainly me that was making the smell. Hands up to that. But yeah, wonderful couple of days. And I think a lot of people were a little bit disappointed with the fact it was a short course. But I did see quite a few social media posts from park runs and other events that they didn't even get the event on. So on reflection, the fact that they got 2-day Helvellyn guys, now 14, got an event on. It's really good. They have that. That's a tried and tested plan B route, the out and back. And
you see everybody when you run out, you turn around, you literally come back on the same course.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really, really sociable. There's a couple of bits actually. Martindale Church, some people go on the back and some people like I did stay on the road. So there's a few, like I totally missed Angela Green, one of our listeners. She must have done Martindale Church and I was on the road. And immediately, as soon as we left the village hall, there was 5 of us and 4 of us were slipping and sliding out the bank out of Bascombe, while Neil, who had spikes on, which was probably a great kit choice for the day, he was just clickety-clacking up the street. I did fall, but no injuries or anything like that. So I think for me, the whole goal for the day was we all stay together. No one gets injured for Christmas.
Are you the weakest link, Gary?
Was I the weakest link? On the way out, yes. On the way out, I was definitely the one at the back. And like I said, it wasn't a sociable run. And immediately when someone goes to the loo and the rest of the group ditch them, and then you've got like a minute. You've had a wee for a minute or 30 seconds. And then
Jeez,
to try...
how long is your wee?
But to try and claw that back, when everyone's just running off, wow, that's like 2 hard miles at that 30 seconds
I don't
past
really enjoy running in a group like that because, you have your highs and lows, don't you? And you be a bit like hard on yourself if you are the one that's slightly lagging. You're like, why can't I keep up? And then, but it sounds like then you turned and you got your second wind.
Oh, yeah, I felt okay on the way back. I think, because I've ran. Endurance is not an issue. Speed maybe is an issue. So, yeah, I felt okay on the way back. But, yeah, really good day. We all stayed together. Saw loads of listeners, which I absolutely love. It's really... If anybody sees me and they're like a bit nervous of like, oh, I don't want to pester him, whatever. No, don't feel like that. I think it's awesome that people listen to the show.
But he'll either be friendly or he'll say, not right now. I'm with my family.
Yeah, no, I really don't mind. But yeah, 5 hours. We just snuck in under 5 hours, so that was good.
Whereabouts in the field did you finish?
Oh goodness me, I haven't got a clue. I'm sure someone said about 30th, but I didn't track that. I'd be really interested. Somebody who was at the sharp end, because you all go off staggered. You start whenever you want with 2-day Helvellyn. So somebody who gets back quite early, in theory, could just see their name dropping down the leaderboard progressively. And yeah, from the people at the sharp end, I wonder what the psychology of that was like. But for me, yeah, I know aspirations for a time or anything. I really didn't think we were going to do under 5 hours. I thought it was 27 miles, but it turned out to be 26 and a half. And you could just, when people were doing the maths in the head and the group just slowly started to speed up. And I was terrified because I thought, well, I remember that road coming out of Askham was really treacherous.
Yeah.
But it just
was it all right once?
It was a lot better, yeah. It heated up quite a bit. So yeah, I think we're like 4 hours, 59 minutes and 40 seconds. So it was awesome. Just a great end to what has been, I have to say, all county tops and Bob Graham's support for various people, loads of times on the trails, Lakeland 100. It's been a really good year. But my top, I think I mentioned last week's show about me. Was it last week? Or I mentioned it before about putting gels in a soft flask, because my little hands get cold and I don't want any kind of admin when I'm running. It stops me eating, and that worked a treat, honestly, Eddie. Not that Two Day Hell is a particularly technical course, but if I wanted to eat when I didn't want to take my gloves off, I had like 7 gels in my soft flask mixed with water so I could actually drink it. And it worked a treat. And then when it was easier to, like a runnable section and I needed to eat, then I just had mint cake or flapjack or something like that. And I bumped into, this guy must think I'm absolutely mental, because a guy called Paul Swindles, I met him at the All County Tops and he beat me at the Lakeland 100. And he's the guy who I really didn't know how old he was. So I saw him in the pub and asked him, and I like literally just jumped on him straight away and asked him how old he was. That's
a picture for our listeners.
But a really lovely guy. Turns out he's a bit younger than me, so we're not in the age category. But
as soon as you found out, were you like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. But I had this, like, I saw him, I thought, I recognize him. And I had this like little, when you have like a little speech in your head, how you're going to approach a subject, and then you've kind of almost like visualized the answers too, but he obviously wasn't privy to this conversation I had in my head. So I've just jumped all over him. He must have thought, what the hell is...
Anyway, he's one to cross off your list for your competition. You can be friends with him.
But I did also a stats deep dive on the podcast, which I thought was really awesome. And I live in this obviously northern bubble, and I do bump into listeners quite often when I'm out on the trail. So I just think everybody is from the northeast or the northwest, maybe a few people
I think everyone in the world is. I know yourself.
But it turns out our largest group of listeners are from London, which I thought was completely wild, which is awesome. Spotify and Apple are our biggest platform. I think Apple just pip Spotify. But all over the world, we've got Japan, Australia, Brazil, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, and the Philippines. And that listener in Argentina will be super happy at the moment. But when I'm just thinking about it, I think, God, there's some guy or girl rocking the trails like Mount Fuji or whatever like that, and they're listening to us to Twitter and on. I just think that is absolutely wild. And the last thing, which I've got to say, your Instagram story stopped me in the tracks the other day, where you put your kids and you said something, probably misquoting it, but it was basically like, goodness me, regroup and conquer, and the training
adapt and conquer. I think you've got to quote me correct, right?
But it's all part of the race. I think that was what you said too, and I was just like, yeah, that is. And I've never really kind of visualized it like that. So all the training sessions are, as soon as you enter that, if you just want to complete a race, maybe you don't have to go deep into all the ins and outs of it. But if it's a big, super scary goal and you've got to do some work to achieve your goal, then every decision you make, and that's not necessarily like doing more, that'll know when to ease off too. It's all part of the race. I just thought it was so powerful. And I've told quite a few people about that when I've seen them over the weekend, spreading the word.
Adapt and conquer.
Yeah.
Adapt and conquer. I had to adapt and conquer last week because it didn't. I listened to you very kindly sent me the podcast to listen to, and I loved it. I don't often listen to it because listening to your, let alone having to listen to any more of Garrett. Anyway, for editing purposes, I did listen to it, and you did a jolly good job. So back at you for the compliment.
Oh, thank you, Eddie.
Well done. A lot of work went into that. But yeah, so I was listening to myself as I was out on the podcast going, oh, I'll be doing my 2 long days. And when you guys listen to this, I'll be like, almost finished. And I just started and I had 2 big days and I was so sad. I was like, oh, it's Friday. I'd wanted to do it on, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. I had the rounds of these colds and everything that seems to go around everybody at the moment. And so I had to just take, there's nothing you can do. And I'm the parent that works from home. So I'm the one that has to then rearrange. That's the deal. That's my that's part of my remit. So I had, and they were different children, so it was just a rotation of quite ill children. So that I had to move everything along, and then I sort of like fueled and everything for these long days, and I'd worked on anyway, so dull. It did mean that I had to, we had to rearrange everything, but we managed it. And we moved everything along to the weekend, but it was massive. It was like mentally quite tough because the kids were starting their ski training and my littlest one was starting her first block of training with ski club, which is a big deal. And I'd wanted to sort of see her off and make sure she knew they have to be much more independent. She's only 7, and I wanted to be there. And I if I was going to fit this training session, I couldn't. And that's a bit of so I felt selfish. She couldn't get less, but as the parent, you just feel guilty about everything, isn't it? And so Bryn then had to do all the pickups, drop-offs, feeding, fueling for 2 days while I was literally just out the back hiking up around this hill. Okay, so we've got this hilly loop that I run up normally to get to the trails, but we can't get to the trails anymore. Okay. But it is packed down. Various states of packed snow, icy snow, really deep snow, potholes. And this week I've actually now done it. I think now, because I did it last night. How many times? Last week I did the loop 19 times.
You've got to be a local legend on that stress.
I don't know what Strava. Anyway, the Strava sections are so sad because obviously it's on snow and I'm hiking a lot more. So it's like you are 4 minutes slower over like a 30-second segment. Yeah, it's about 2.5 miles, about 700 feet of climbing. Because it's under trees and stuff, the actual climbing and mileage is different almost every lap, which drives me mad. Anyway, I just have gone up there basically just so that I could just get my head down. There's skiers at the weekend. It's quite busy, not really busy, but there's people skiing up and coming down. But during the day, it's really, really quiet. So, and I quite like that. I just want to be on my own. I don't want to be around anybody else. Head down. And it's got lots of climbing. So for my 2 back-to-back days, I did, the first day was low. It was snowing. It was a snowstorm. So 6 hours. It took me 19 miles, took me 6 hours. But that had about 4,500 feet of climbing. It was so slow. And then the next day I went out and did the same. And I'd done 19 miles in about 3 hours. It was an hour quicker, basically, when the snow was a bit better. And I managed almost 30 miles, 6,000 feet climbing, honestly.
It's just staggering, the volume, the time that you're spending out there.
The last time, so with an hour to go on the second day, I started to get quite cold because, well, it's minus, it was about -10 the second day for most of the day. And slowly that seeps into your bones. So I try not to message Bryn because I'm like, I won't have that crutch when I'm on the spine. I have to just get myself normally if I was on a long run, I was feeling rubbish, I'd message him with some sort of emoji and I'd get some reply. I was like, I can't do that. Anyway, I did on this second day send him a message saying I'm getting, last lap. I'm getting a bit cold now. And then he sent me he was like, right, look up, breathe, and move your body. So I was like, that's a good spine.
You two are awesome. You're coming out with some gold.
Looked up, and I hadn't really looked up for about 3 hours because I'd just been committed to this lap. Yeah. People's faces were hilarious when I saw them. They'd be out for a 2 or 3 hour snowshoe, and they'd see me 16 times.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "You're going up again?" And I'd be like, "Well, yeah, obviously, I'm going past you going up. What do you think I'm doing, you?" So I did that. I looked up. I was like, God, I haven't looked around all day, really. Looked to the mountains. I've got this amazing buff balaclava. Anyone doing the spine or doing anything like that, and it's covered. I do look like a bank robber, but it's quite lightweight. But it keeps all the heat in.
Oh,
I was like, come on, what will you do if you're out? Come on, get warm. Yeah, but you can. So, like, I was carrying all this kit in my bag all day. And I was like, why don't you put some of that kit on?
Oh my goodness. It's so easy, isn't it? Just to ignore the obvious.
I put more kit on, put the buff on, had something to eat, obviously. And then I've worked out a routine to do. There used to be a yoga lady. My mum used to, I think it was like Lottie's yoga or something to a tape, an audio tape. So I moved my arms. I did a little routine and shoulders and stuff. And Brim was like, yeah, because obviously he's done so much marching with a heavy bag. So you have to keep moving muscles. Otherwise, especially when you get cold, you end up like a turtle.
I just find I seem to contract in.
Yeah, so it's like, gotta, and then breathe. That was such good tips. And I flew the last day. I felt so much better. As soon as I'd finished that, we had to go to a Christmas soiree, a little Christmas party. Oh my God. When you've been outside literally for 2 days, really cold. It wasn't cold, but the cold air. And I went to sweat. My face was so red. There was no makeup that was going to help this red face. And they'd laid out this table of party food. Gary, you'd have actually laid on the table and just eaten it all.
I just picked the table up.
There's kids' crisps I love, like the ketchup flavour or something. Trying to speak French through stuffing all these crisps. And she'd made like veggie sausage rolls. And I was like, I can't get it. I mean, we got there. We were sort of like the second family to arrive. There were about 8 families going. And Bryn was like, hold back on the buffet. It's getting
There's yourself.
Pizza bit. I was like, oh my God, I can't stop myself. I'm so hungry. It was so good.
Were these English or were they French friends?
A mixture of English and French.
Just curious on the French party food. What's a French party food?
And like us, like apéro, little nibbles. They've definitely gone into more of the English like party food market since we've literally moved out here now, like Caforcel. The little canapes and stuff like that. Yeah. Lots of cheese, lots of cold meats.
Prawns. Like a battered prawn.
No,
no.
We did do some teriyaki chicken. Anyway, I was really pleased with how that went. Did feel a bit trash the next day, mainly as well because I've gone out and smashed the party food and was pretty dehydrated. But I went out for a nice easy run. Got one quality session because I felt guilty because you'd said to me, Eddie, have you done any quality running? And I was like, no, I haven't done anything for a week. It's in my plan, but I'm always like, ay. So I jumped on the treadmill and I did a classic Eddie, put it up to percentage. I can't remember what I put it up to, and did 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1 minutes, getting faster. Yeah. And I could still run a 6:45 mile pace with a little bit of breathing. I definitely have not got any speed. I can hike faster than many German hikers now, but the speed.
It's quite depressing, isn't it? The speed seems to go quite quick.
Yeah, and running for a long time. When I have to run a mile now with the pack, I'm like, God, when's the walking bit? When can I start eating again? Also ordered some better goggles. My eyes are so sore from being outside so much. They're coming. So I've got the like mandatory goggles that we have to carry in the pack.
Okay.
But I was like, I'm never wearing those. I do not want a picture of me with those goggles on.
It's a good look.
Well, now I've got the buff. I'm like, I might as well embrace it. The buff, I mean, my buff and my miner's head torch. Even Bryn like piddled himself when he saw me last night heading out. Like, might as well add the goggles. But even when it's not like a snowstorm, my eyes are really sore from being outside for that time, just like the eyelids and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to have to embrace the goggles. So I'm just going to have to give up all dignity, I decided, actually, and just let it all go. And we'll never look at them.
You'll have to share a link. I'm curious what they look like.
I'll just take a picture. I'll put the full outfit on. I think they're arriving today. I'm going out again in the night, and I'll scare you all with a picture of me in my nighttime.
Great. I love it.
So last night I went out in the dark to practice my night drills. Gary, freaked myself out so bad in the woods.
I thought about when we text and you were like, you just off out. I'm thinking, oh yes, I'm just off out of Wrexham. It's pretty dark.
I went up in the woods of this lap, if you're a stalker or a murderer, please don't come and find me if you listen to this podcast. Just leave me be, all right? You can come and find me at like mile 200 in the spine and put me out of my misery. The first bit is like open, and so it's not scary. And then it goes into like this dark. Was never been scared normally. But I kept hearing somebody behind me, and I kept hearing, and I realised it was obviously I'd hear somebody because it's snow, so I'm going to hear someone coming up. I realized it was my packs, things moving in my pack. It sounded like, so I developed this technique with my poles of like pushing my poles out behind me every time. I was like, if someone's there, the poles are going to hit them. Honestly, I proper freaked myself out. I thought I could hear voices for like 20 minutes. I kept turning around. I was like, what am I going to do if this happens to me? Like in the race when I'm out on the, I don't think the moors will be as scary as it's the trees that do it for me. It's the trees when it falls
It's the dogs. The dogs always freak me out.
Well, I didn't take the dogs on purpose because I was like, they're my crutch. If the dogs had been with me, I wouldn't have been scared. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to take the dogs. Otherwise, I'm so used to running with dogs anyway. What am I going to do? So I was like, do you know what? There's nobody here. You're in the middle of nowhere. So you're just going to have to get over it. I had a real strict word with myself. I put on some loud music because I was like, well, if they're going to come and get you.
I was just going to ask you, have you got any music on?
I was like, I'm going to put music on because if they're going to come and get me, at least I can't hear them.
You wouldn't
and then
know
it was fine. I got back into the zone. I was like, well, that's good. I handled that. I got scared for no reason. And I got through it and I just carried on. And then Bryn gave me another good tip going, if you're moving forward at pace, it's very hard for somebody to come up behind you. Yeah. Just keep moving forward and focus on moving forward, not behind you. It's like, okay.
Well, I can agree with that. Trying to catch the group after I had away on Saturday.
It's very hard if someone is moving with purpose forward. Anyway, let's not talk about it. So ended last week with a nice, easy run. Felt fine, though my quads were a little tired from smashing them up and down in the snow. I tell you what, my calves as well. All the different angles are changing in the snow. Oh, they were a little bit sore.
I'm hearing quite often on different podcasts how important your calves and your hamstrings are.
You gotta do your calf, yeah. All that posterior chain, very important. And we finished the week with football. We won't go into too much detail because I'm sure Gary's not big on football anyway. It was a tense moment. And my boys, obviously, they'd had all these bets with their ski coaches, and they went absolutely mental when Argentina won against the penalties. And one of them actually took a packet of tissues up the next day for a ski coach.
Oh, classic. I didn't watch the game, but it was supposed to be amazing, wasn't it?
It was a really good game. It was a great game of football, and the right team won, even though perhaps I shouldn't say that. Yeah. Shh. Anyway, that's me. I'm done. Another big week going down. Last big week, Gary.
Time for our second instalment of Brew with the Coaches, and this week we answer and discuss all about race day fueling. Pop the kettle on, settle down into a nice, easy pace, and take a listen. Right, so first question from over on Patreon comes from Angela Green, a long-term fan of the show. And Angela said, I recently saw a post on Instagram that for ultra-endurance distance runners, we should focus on calories rather than grams of carbs per hour because of working at lower intensities. Interested in thoughts on this, as the message is generally to eat 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour rather than, say, 300 calories per hour. Products are so expensive for proper sports nutrition, so it would be good to know if she could save money and just carry pork pies.
I'd say always carry a pork pie,
Even if you're not running, just in your pocket, safety.
School run, Tesco's, have a pork pie, you never know. It's better be safe than sorry and not have a pork pie, I would say. That's the first key takeaway from that question. So the nutrition piece is really interesting, and I think it comes down to predominantly how fast you're running in terms of your intensity level and the distance that you're covering. So if you look at a marathon runner, for example, you're going to be specifically ultra distances or yeah. So let's say you're doing like a short ultra, let's say you're doing 100K or something like that. And so I would say if you're probably going to be running, if I was running it, I'd be running it at a higher pace. And if you're running faster, you're going to struggle to take on food basically, full stop. Now, you might be able to sustain something like gels or, the carbs and drinks, which are probably the best way to get that nutrition on board, particularly early on and later on. But I'd say it's got to be centered on how long you think you can do that for. Now, by far, liquids and gels are probably the easiest on it to take on board, the easiest way to get carbs into your body. But if you're going to be doing something like the spine or something longer, you're going to have to take on real food at some point. Like, there's very few people, I would say, who can just do gels for, something like 100 miles.
For something really long, would you need to maybe introduce some protein that you might get from a pork pie? Is there some benefit in that?
Yeah, so I think I think it is very race specific. So if you look at something like the spine, you're going to be moving at a slower rate. And I think you really do need to be taking on real food as early as possible, throughout. As you go on in the race, in long endurance events where, you're talking days, your ability to take on food, real food, dramatically decreases. So by the end of it, you're really struggling to take on any kind of food, really, in a lot of cases. Now, the evidence tends to suggest now, actually I saw this very much on Dragon's Back towards the end of the last one, where guys were taking on real food, lots of real food at the start, but towards the last couple of days, they just couldn't take on that food anymore. So really, the only way forward for them was to take gels. And I remember chucking loads of gels at loads of people to say, just take on a gel. Because if you can take a gel, it's much easier to take on a gel than to chew out a handful of peanuts. The longer the race, I would say you want to try and get as much food in you, regardless of, carbs, calories. I would concentrate on just getting the food in you, as much food that as you're comfortable working at that intensity at, because it's got to match your intensity output. If you're doing shorter races, well, yeah, I mean, you can train your body to push gels, to push on that kind of, that would be a much easier in terms of carbohydrate intake. But if you're doing that for 24 hours plus, there's, studies show that actually it can lead to lower sodium in your blood, which can cause you GI issues as well. So fundamentally, it just comes down to your own body and how much you can absorb. Now, the guidelines in regards to 60 to 90% for carb increase, that's actually very top end. Most top end athletes will probably do that. Most average athletes, and I would include myself in that, probably can't do more than 40 grams of carbs an hour. The rest of it, you're probably going to get GI issues. You're probably going to start to feel sick. You're going to start to feel nauseated because you're just taking on too much, and your body is not conditioned to utilizing that. And you've got to remember, you're also doing your own fat utilization in your own body as well, which is going to provide you some energy there. I mean, there are guys who will do long ultras and not eat any food at all, but they're still doing they're still doing really, really well. Yeah. So I think the key thing is not to get swept up in carbs per hour, depending on what race you're doing. Like if you're marathon training, that is going to come into it a lot more. But if you're ultra training, I would just concentrate on getting as much food that you can get in and continue to run on and continue to feel good with. That's the key thing, not to get too consumed by carbs. If you're going to start looking at that for a longer stage race and you want to build on that in terms of nutrition, well, then you're going into the, how many grams per kilogram of muscle of weight and that kind of stuff, and a coach should be able to break that down for you to work out your carb intake. But even then, that's not always gonna pan out for you. And I know very few people who that actually relates to well. In terms of the science of it, the science is great, but the reality is you've got to get out, you've got to practice it, you've got to practice eating that pork pie when you're feeling really sick, you've got to practice if you can take on gels or if they're going to make you feel sick. I often see people take too many gels and use gels too much when they're not conditioned to it, and that gives them issues. But likewise, you don't need all these gels. Like I go back to Dragon's Back race. So top competitors at Dragon's Back race this year were eating everything from Ginster's pasties.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, but like, you know, it's so.
You don't know what a Ginster's pasty is?
It's a pasty.
Pasty.
Like,
You don't know what pasty is?
I have them every day.
It's better than a pork pie. Bigger.
The Zoom call's gone wild. Chris says,
A
we
pasty?
were listening so quietly
Oh,
to
they're
all your
delicious.
fueling tips, and the
You'll
minute
love
you
it.
went pasty, we all went, what?
So yeah, I mean, these are, I'd say, the top 10 competitors on Dragon's Back last year ate everything from pasties to monsters, a can of Monster. I mean,
Oh, wow.
at every checkpoint. Gels, gels again. Russ, I know you did gels pretty much the whole way through the year before, didn't you? And again, if you're doing it that shorter, like the amount of time that you were out for there, Russell, was like 7 to 8 hours or something, wasn't it? I think.
Not long at all.
Oh, shut up. I think, 3 to 4 hours. I just waited because the camp wasn't set up mainly because it was so bad.
So if you're out for 7 to 8 hours, yeah, you can do gels, you can do liquids, and that's a really good, efficient way to be able to move very quickly and take on the carbs that you need. If you're going to be out for 10 hours plus, you're going to get cold. You're going to need more stuff in you just to keep your body going. And if you're doing something like the spine, I get it. You're definitely going to need real food because otherwise your body's just not going to be able to survive on gels alone. So it's got to be very race specific, and you've got to practice eating, I would say, a mix of real food and gels, depending on what that race is and what your race expectations or goals are in order to hit that. So that would be my take on it. That went on forever, didn't it?
Nuggets.
Very good. Very good.
I love the practice. Definitely practicing. It's like you say, it's race specific. If I was going to say be racing maybe a trail marathon, I couldn't be bothered to maybe fumble around with a pork pie. I just want to get a gel in as quick as possible and move on. But if it was a longer race, then yeah, but all about practice.
Gels I find are also really good pick you up at the end. So, like I used gels towards the end of the spine just because I couldn't take any more food, and it was just a very quick way to get stuff on board quickly. So that's also a good thing to do. Or if you're having a dull
as you
moment,
climb up the steps up to the Cheviot,
Yeah.
pouring it down. I have 14 gels and I'm good to go. Don't worry, mountain safety team. I'm good to go. What? Russell, what's your take on it? I'm looking forward to a diverse. There's no right or wrong with fueling as well, we should say. There's no right or wrong. Like, the only wrong you can do is not to fuel. So everything is very personal. Russell, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, well, I think Trish nailed it there. Mainly the thing that she said that I really agree with is you've got to get out and you've got to try. When I came from track, we ran 800 meters, fueling didn't exist. It wasn't a thing, obviously. And
in fact, you didn't want to fuel, did you? 800 meters was like 3 hours before nothing because it's just the lactate.
It just bounced around in your stomach. So it was something that I had to learn, and just getting out on the hill is an opportunity not just to get your mountain legs, but also to fuel, really take training your gut seriously. And Trish covered that. The only other thing I would say is, and Trish said as well, we're all so different. And if you look at a herd of gazelle, it's really simple for them. They just eat grass, right? But humans, we've spread all over the planet. We've all got different genetic backgrounds. Some of us have got different tolerances. So I would only suggest, was it Angela?
Yes.
Hi,
Dear
Angela.
sweet Angela.
Go with your cravings, and sometimes if the craving that you have, you don't have that food on you, make a note of it and then come back for it. See what you're craving when you're out there, and then actually go buy that food and bring it along next time, and really, like, bit of a platitude here, but trust your gut, okay, Angela? Just work on and just try and improve eating while you're moving, and it's the only way to do it is to get out there and do it, but otherwise nothing much to add.
It's all about practice, and I would the the only thing I have got to add is that the most important thing, not only to eating, is going to fuel your muscles and fuel your body to move. Like the top 10 people in an ultra and a marathon, probably like physically, fitness wise, there's only so much training that you can do. They stand on the start line. There's not going to be that much difference. The biggest difference is how they handle themselves on the course. And the way they handle themselves is by feeding your brain. Anybody, and I always, as clients will go, oh, my pace dropped off. I didn't put my coat on for some reason, even though I was in a -10 snowstorm. Oh, I never put my gloves on. I didn't think about doing that. I took a wrong turn. It's nearly always fuel related. Yeah. When I was out doing my spine recce a couple of weeks ago, I said to James, who I was running with, like, what do you do when you have those moments when you think, oh, I can't do this? You know, you're 30 miles into the spine and you go, oh, my God, it's such a long way. He said, I eat, Eddie. I just eat. And I was like, that is like the best bit of advice is that the minute you feel the brain have a little wobble, or you lose a bit of concentration, or you feel a bit weak, you know, have something to eat. And if you're doing these long ultras, it is an eating game, but it's also not pleasant. And I think a lot of people that go into ultras, they're sold it on social media. It's just a run and a picnic, but the picnic is basically someone throwing food and going, eat it, swallow it, keep moving. It's really hard. You have to practice it, and it's not sometimes going to feel good, and you're not going to want to eat. But I would say, put it in your mouth. In your mouth, swallow, and you're going to feel better in 10 minutes time. And the other thing, as Trish said, is that if you know you've got hills coming up, if you know you're into the last 10 miles, eat according to what the race is. If you know you've got a lovely long running stretch coming, you're doing a hilly ultra, make sure you're fueled into that running stretch so that you're not trying to shove a pork pie into the one bit of 10K flat bit of running. So have a bit of preparation as well in the course. Again, just like the other two said, don't get hung up on the numbers. Wouldn't worry too much about it. Just eat as much as you can tolerate. Practice, practice, practice. Angela, hope that helps. Let us know.
Did Andy Blow say also maybe don't take on the food when your efforts increased? There's some issues then with GI if you're kind of maybe hitting threshold pace for some reason on an ultra and you try and eat that pork pie. Probably not a good idea.
Obviously, when the heart rate is elevated and you're trying hard, it's much harder for the body to then absorb the fuel, and that's when GI distress kicks in. So you've got to manage it, and that's when you can use gels and drinkable carbs as well. Is that if you are working that little bit harder, or you know you've got a running section, don't fill the stomach then with a pork pie. Maybe just sip on some carb drink. Thinking athlete, but you can only be a thinking athlete if you're a fueling athlete.
Give it to the opposition. Give it to me. I'll have the pork pie.
Get the crew.
Cool. Well, I hope that helped, Angela.
So I think what we were saying is then, to answer the actual question, was don't worry about carbs. Go with the calories. Is that right? Let's go with. So don't worry too much about the carbs.
I would say don't worry about the carbs, and don't really overthink the calories. Just make sure you're getting food in that you like and you know you can handle for the intensity that you're going at.
I think the only time those numbers are actually really useful is by, and often I get clients do this when they go on training runs, is to come back and then do calculations of the numbers, because nearly always people underestimate how much they actually ate. And when we count up the numbers, it's like, okay, so you had 300 calories for your 20-mile run. Let's up that a little. Let's see. Remember as well, when you're fueling in training and you're practicing fueling, lots of people don't like doing it because they're like, because, you know, but you're not only practicing for the race, you're also practicing for your next training sessions, and it's all about recovery. So if you go and do and you don't fuel your runs enough, then you're impacting your recovery so much. So again, think of it not just practicing nutrition, but also being able to maintain a healthy training cycle.
The key thing is that you're getting something in every hour. That's as long as you're getting something in every hour that you can stomach.
I think Garmin has a beep beep, doesn't it? Eat, drink. I think lots of them now have.
Mine every 30 minutes.
I don't like it because I then I'm like anti my watch, and I go, but I don't want to. I don't want to do it now. I was going to do it later.
Screw you, Garmin. I'm my own way.
I never like to do. My Garmin's told me I've been detraining for the last 4 weeks. But some people I know that's a really good way of reminding themselves to eat. I don't need any reminding. In fact, I probably need to be told. Eddie, Garmin goes, Eddie, you're okay. You'll be all right. You don't need to. I love that. And I love that everybody's different. Everybody's different. Everybody feels differently. Most important thing is to put stuff in your mouth. It's a good life lesson.
And also the best laid plans, you just might not fancy that pork pie or the gel or whatever it is. You've got to adapt.
You know what I did last night, which is not good practice, but in some ways it was good practice, was I ate all day in the knowledge that I was going to go out and do a longer run in the evening to make sure I was well fueled. And then I didn't eat very much at all during the run to do a bit of practice of like just a bit of confidence that if some reason my food runs out or something happens, that I can go quite a few hours on my fat stores, of which there is still plentiful. And I also knew, this is again bad, but I knew that I would going to come home for a big supper and then I wanted to go to sleep, so I didn't want to be stuffed with a ton of sugar. So again, not wise, but that was my thinking. And actually I didn't actually feel hungry, or I did sip on Tailwind throughout. So that's sort of still had quite I didn't spend my whole time eating, which is what I'd done the previous. So I know that I can eat and eat and eat. I just kind of got my head down and got on with it, which I probably will do a little bit more during the night as well, is I will keep drip feeding, but I won't probably stuff as much fuel into my gob as I do during the day, because it also makes me feel a bit sick. So I practiced that a bit and I felt fine until, but I made turn to run home and then I was like, oh my God, I'm starving.
I feel more towards the end of a run. It's something you said. I do listen to what you say, Eddie. I take it all on board, but I would be that classic person who 5 miles to go. Oh, I don't need to eat anything. But since you mentioned it probably 3 or 4 times on the podcast, even at Tour de Helvellyn, we were like literally coming to ask him and my watch beeped. I thought, well, this will help me. I don't need this energy for the race, but it will help me recover a bit quicker. So,
Gary, such a pro. Let us know any top tips for your race day fueling. If you're a pork pie eater, personally, I'm not. But let us know. Pop over on Facebook and let us know.
This week we talked to Elsey Davis ahead of a winter Bob Graham round record attempt. I think it's so bold of it to put it out there. Sometimes people keep things under wraps, but she's definitely put a flag in the ground. And she had such an amazing 2022 too, so we are well overdue a catch up. Really interested to know how life is for her now as a sponsored athlete with North Face. And I wish I was a little bit quicker, Eddie, because I would be popping my hand up too to help her on a leg or two of her Bob Graham round attempt. But unfortunately, I think I'll be more of a hindrance than a help. But I hope you enjoy our chat with Elsey.
Hello, we are delighted to welcome Elsey Davis onto the Tea and Trails podcast, an old friend of our old podcast and a new friend of our new podcast. It's a year since we last chatted, and I'm pretty sure when we last chatted, you were still working, but you were about to stop working. And I don't think you dropped the bombshell that you'd signed with North Face, but I think we knew, but we didn't say anything. I think it was at that sort of cusp of your life. How has the year been? How is life as a professional North Face athlete? Changed beyond recognition.
Hi, thanks for having me back. It's been one of the most incredible years, really. It's hard to know where to start, but I think when I spoke to you last, I was still very much muddling my way through trail running. Still am to a certain degree. It's a whole new world and definitely a better one for me and a happier one. And it feels like this last year feels like it's been like 10 years because I've just done so much with it.
Have you missed working, or have you found like the transition from having a little bit more free time? How have you filled it with more training or more resting or?
I don't miss. I enjoy working as a doctor, but it's been great to like not have that extra stress. Although I'm a GP trainee, so I chose that because it's the least, in my opinion, stressful course to go on, and it's much more flexible in terms of 9 to 5 and things. I guess having started, I just joined the North Face and now also just joined Oakley and CDAS, 2 other companies. So I've got quite a lot of financial backing from that. So that means that I can take a bit of a step back from work as a doctor at the moment. And yeah, put my money into altitude tents and incline treadmills. So yeah, it's been a massive help. And yeah, it just means that it frees me up to be able to choose whatever races I want to do and spend a bit of time there looking at the course before, and spend, just because if before I would just like fly in, do the race and then leave, and you just don't get to experience the place. And whereas now I can get there a bit early and really kind of enjoy, because every place you go to is incredible. So you need like a week or two to really explore it. So that's been absolutely amazing.
I wondered, I hear sometimes with some athletes when they go away, they might have, say, it could be like an Adidas Terex camp. Do you have all that kind of thing before maybe a big event? You all get together as a team?
Yeah, so UTMB week, North Face put us up in a chalet for a couple of weeks before, just so we could train there and see whichever course we were doing, and just to adapt a little bit to the altitude, I guess, as well. And then the week of UTMB, there is the option of a North Face house, although I chose to stay with my wife. Just like UTMB week is just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I was so glad to be just down the road in that time, because I was exhausted. Like, honestly, I've never known anything like it, and I didn't expect it because I'd never been to UTMB week before. So yeah, that was actually something that I would probably do in future as well.
I've heard that from lots of people, that they actually prefer to go and like stay in Italy and then just come over for the race, because Germany is mad.
Yeah.
Talking of all the places, I'm looking through all your results now, and all around the world, not just over in Chamonix. You had a 5th place at Trans Gran Canaria, 2nd overall at Ultra Sierra Nevada, GB team at the Trail Champs 47K, and I think that was the team bronze that you took there. 5th at Sierra Zinal. Woof. And 40K World Champs Thailand team bronze. So every single race you turned up at, it seemed you were able to perform. Do you think that was down to the fact that you had a bit more time to recover this year, or it's sort of all coming together, less injuries?
I didn't come 5th at Sierra now. I wish. That would be insane.
No. Oh, you did. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry. Apologise.
That's my fault. I'll own that one. Apologies.
Gary, you own that. Okay.
In my defense, I was coming back from COVID for that one. But it was a good experience. But yeah, I have been able to consistently train and race the last year. I've barely had any sort of breaks. I think one of the biggest things is I've been self-coached, so I'm much better at listening to my body now. Like, I think before I'd be on a plan and I would just stick to it no matter what, whereas now all the onus is on me, and that in a way has been better, because I don't run if I don't feel good anymore, because it's like now I can see what's the point, and I know I'm kind of I'm just kind of taking things day by day. I have a rough plan of what I want to do in my head, but I don't never stick to it fully. So I'm just happy to jump on the bike a lot more. I guess not having that constant pounding on the roads has helped. I found like when I did like 5 races in 6 weeks over the summer, and each of them were 30 kilometers or more, and it wasn't set in stone that I'd do those. It was more like, see how I go. If I feel like doing it, I'll do it. If I don't, and I'll pull out. Like Sierra now was one of those. But I just felt stronger each race. It seems so different to road running. Like every race I did, I felt stronger than the last one, and maybe that's because I was a week further away from COVID, because I had COVID before that. So like by the end of it, it was like I was having my best races were at the end of that block. It was more psychologically towards the end that I needed the break rather than physically. But yeah, it's been a big year of kind of getting more strength in the mountains. Like before, I would feel like as soon as we hit the hill, I would suffer a lot and just about hang on to stay competitive, and then use the flats as a way to catch up, or the downs. So I was just like, every time I hit a hill, I dread it. Whereas as the season's gone on, now I've sort of getting strength in the hills. By the World Championships at Thailand, I was like, it's probably the most I've felt like an actual mountain runner rather than just a road runner trying to blag it.
You don't normally, I see that you mentioned you don't really race that much on the roads, especially say that kind of distance. You would take a good break, which sounds like, you kind of raced into fitness, really. Yeah.
And I guess it's in between the races, knowing that that's a training race, and then in between races still fitting in the training, because otherwise if you do just race, you just lose fitness because you're not doing anything in between. So it's kind of managing those in between and fitting in sessions around those races so that, and then, within that, the OCC was one of the final ones, and that was a big target for me. So that was like the target race. So I'd taper for that, but for the rest, I would kind of manage my training in between, as well as recovering. And I think because not working, it meant I could eat really well, and I'd sometimes sleep 12, 13 hours a day. So that's a huge advantage in recovery.
Massive if you don't have to set an alarm and get up and do a session before work or drag yourself. I was just saying to Gary earlier, I've got to drag myself out at like 7:00 this evening, and those are the worst when it's dark and it's cold and there's nothing out there.
Have dinner and go to bed.
There's nothing out there but misery waiting for you. I've got our first Patreon question from Jonathan Zink for you. As someone who also suffers with vertigo but loves mountains, what tactics do you use to overcome this fear and be so confident?
I was scared of heights. That was a big thing at the start, and I know that when I did Ring of Steel, it was a massive deal for me. I had to really build myself up to do that, but I had to do it if I wanted to go to the Golden Trail Series national final, because it was like the qualifying race. I think
amazing what we can make ourselves do. It'd be fine. It'd be fine.
I'm just so worried about like getting what they call Craig fast and stuck on the mountain, and then embarrassingly have to be like brought down. I guess the main thing is just doing it, and doing it with people that you trust to begin with, so that you can see how they move over the ridge for one, and then the other thing is kind of just focusing on the trail in front of you, and once you kind of look down, and then that can send me in a spiral. So I kind of just think about one foot in front of the other, and when I'm racing, actually I find that it doesn't affect me because I'm so focused on the competition, and the adrenaline keeps me going. So I found it's more in training. So in training, you can always make sure you're with someone who's experienced and been over that ridge a lot. I know that coming off Hallsfell Ridge in the dark the other night, I was really nervous about that. That's in the leg one of Bob Graham. But I was with Ellis, who has tried to do the double Bob Graham. He like knows it inside out, back to front. So yeah, just like being with him made a huge difference. Like, and it was quite snowy, so he made like quite a few diversions, and just knowing someone who knows the fells that well helps give you kind of reassurance and confidence. And yeah, just moving at your own pace, not rushing things, because as soon as you start rushing things, that's when like accidents happen, I guess.
And adrenaline, like you said, adrenaline always helps.
Yeah.
It really does. I saw some pictures of you, my goodness. I think it was Trans Gran Canaria. Talk about adrenaline. You were pretty bashed up there. Did you realise like how much of a tumble you took, or was it just literally at the end you saw like, wow, you had a big black eye, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. So it was like 6 miles in, and it's like 26 miles it was. So I still had, it was at 8 miles in. I think I had 18 or 20 miles left to run. I was going down a cobbled section, and I tripped and just, I don't know, I think I was trying to get a gel out of my pack or something. I just wasn't concentrating. And because my hands were occupied, I just fell straight on my face. And yeah, it felt like a big knock at the time, but I just got straight back up. And like I could feel like all my face bleeding, and then it got really swollen really quickly. And I knew that it looked really bad, but I don't know if it was adrenaline or anything. It wasn't like severely painful at the time. And it was just my face. So I was like, I don't need that to run really. So I was just thinking,
it was just my vision, and I thought that's fine.
The problem is it's like a point-to-point race, so it's really like a nightmare. If you drop out, getting back is like, it's almost easy just to run back, because I didn't know how else. Sarah was 2 miles down the road, and I knew that, but she'd cycled up, so I didn't have a lift with her either. So I thought, I'll see how I feel when I get to Sarah, but like nothing really changed. And
didn't she look at you in horror?
She didn't. But she couldn't really say anything. She was in shock. I just said it's not as bad as it looks, because I knew it looked really bad. And took my stuff from her, because she was like giving me some fluids, and carried on. And so
the doctor in you said, "It's fine. It's fine." Some paracetamol.
And so I just just carried on. Obviously, I dropped back a few places, but I managed to claw my way back. I got down to like 8th, I think, and then clawed my way back to 5th. In the last mile, I overtook one runner to come in top 5.
Amazing.
That's a good team performance. What a good team run.
With one
top 5
eye.
was my bonus, as well as you get prize money for that. So I was like, well, it was worth it for them.
I love all these incentives.
And then at the end there was first aid, and I had like 4 stitches in there. So it worked out really well, but
Wow.
I looked horrendous for the next week.
You did it. Out of all these races you've done this year, have you got to sort of the best point of this year and perhaps the lowest point of this year as well?
God, it's so hard to pick what the high, because they're all just like absolutely amazing. Like every race is offered something completely different and new.
Did you enjoy the OCC experience?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, I'd say that was probably the most memorable of all the races, just because like the whole build up to it, and the atmosphere. It's just like, and being able to spend a few weeks out there before and seeing the course. I like really knowing the course, so that did help. But I'd probably say the biggest high was after Thailand, the World Championships. That's where I felt the best. I felt like the whole year behind me had helped build me into the strongest athlete possible on that line, and I made a lot of sacrifices as well for that. You know, it's kind of in an altitude tent for 4 weeks, which is fairly unpleasant. Especially, I spent the first night, I put the dial on wrong, so I spent the first night at the highest altitude, not the lowest. And
what sort of height is that?
I think it's like 5,000 or 6,000 meters. It doesn't actually say on the thing, but I checked with Sarah, my wife, and we're both doctors, and it just had loads of double negatives in the instructions. And I woke up and I was like, oh my goodness, I feel absolutely terrible. A headache, like the whole of the inside was wet from like obviously just like trying to get breath.
Oh, wow.
That's probe on. It was like 60%. I was like, this can't be right. And then I realized it was like, as I know, I felt awful for like 3 days straight. So I think I'd given myself like hypoxic cell death. So I did that, and then I was also trying to heat train. So I spent like the whole of the build up wearing like 2 leggings, 5 tops, a beanie, and it was a really warm autumn in the UK. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Normally it's really nice if you run in shorts and like just a long sleeve in autumn. It's like my favorite time of year, but I was just making myself feel very uncomfortable all the time. And then I'd get in a sauna for 20 minutes after, and that was like, I just really struggled. I managed to get up to 20 minutes by the end, but it's a long and slow process.
Wow.
So when I got to the race, I was like really nervous that like it wasn't going to go well because I'd done so much. I felt brilliant. I felt like I didn't feel uncomfortable in the heat. I felt strong breathing wise going up the hills. So I do think the altitude tent might have helped. Just strength wise in my legs, I felt really strong going up the hills as well. Like I said, I think that's the most I've felt being like an actual mountain athlete. I felt kind of much more confident and competitive. And I got 8th place there, but it was only 2 minutes between me and 4th place. So it was really an over 42 kilometers. So it was, it's quite
fast and furious.
Yeah. And it was just running for Great Britain for the first time this last year has been like really special to me. So yeah, I think that was probably the highlight.
That would be good. How do they score the teams? I was just chatting with Eddie about this before we jumped on the mics. Is it like the classic cross country in England where you first 6 home, or what's the format for scoring?
So there's 3 of you count. We had 4 in our team. You can have up to 5. Because of the conditions as well, you want an extra one just in case. You suffer with heat stroke and things. And then it varies. It's either counted by position or time, but this time it was counted on time, so cumulative time.
Oh, really? I quite like that in some ways because it keeps everyone's pedal to the metal a bit, doesn't it? Because
high-fiving at the end, carry on. But yeah, it was great because I had Nicola and Sharon on the team for both the Europeans and the Worlds, and we got a bronze at both, which was really nice to share that with them both through the year. Hopefully we'll have the same team next year for the World Champs is in Austria.
It doesn't happen often, does it? As runners, we do. Like I only experience it with my local running club to be part of a team. Normally, it's quite a lonely affair out when you're racing, at least. But yeah, I love the team aspect of it.
Yeah, I would say like obviously I was happy to come eighth, but once we found out we got bronze, I was like, I had goosebumps. I was so excited. It was just really nice and to share it with you guys. Yeah. Often you think it's a lone sport, but it's definitely a team element to the world and European champs, which is nice.
Are you there at the finish though? We always because we're flirting with relegation, so we're counting other teams.
Elsey's flirting with relegation right now. She's not a Sedgefield Harrier, Gary.
Yeah, we're cursing it when the black.
Maybe you need to bring Elsey in as a ringer.
Oh
for
yeah,
cross country.
Open invite there.
Sedgefield Harrier vest.
A first claim though, doesn't it? You've got to be first claim to score.
Harriers at the minute.
Oh, yes.
We can change that.
Should we do move on to the Bob Graham round?
You're desperate, Gary. I've managed to hold you off for 10 minutes. Go on. I'll sip my tea and sit back and listen.
But first of all, a lot of the races that we talked about there, the 40k, 50k, ultimately, and two of our patrons, Kevin Bloy and Raven Walsh, have asked this. But they alluded to basically, I suppose, well, I'd say why the Bob Graham round, and they are interested in why in particular a winter round.
I just have this like real love for the Lake District. Just when I'm there, it just, I don't know, I can't really describe it. It's just the way it makes me feel. I feel like all my worries go away. It's just like a magical place for me.
Yeah.
And the more I go there, the more I'm just obsessed with it. And I guess at the beginning of when I started trail running, my dad's always talked about it because he's a runner as well. And I was just like a little bit intrigued about it. And I totally underestimated it for sure. I was probably I hadn't been training in the hills at all much for probably just a couple of months. And I decided to go out and give leg one a go. And I like sprinted up Skiddaw, right, what I would call a sprint. And then obviously that's the easiest part of leg one in terms of like terrain. So as a road runner, I could just about get away with it. And I went out with nothing. I had one gel, which I had at the top of Skiddaw after that, and then nothing else. And then I went up Great Calver, started to feel a bit like, oof, feeling a bit funny here, like what's going on? And then I got probably not even halfway up Blencathra, and my vision started going. And I'd never had this before. Like in road running, I could go out and not take any energy at all and be fine.
Yeah.
I had a more efficient way of running on the roads, completely inefficient on the hills. And I just was like, I had to lie down on the side of Blencathra, and I was like,
wow,
I'm going to die on the side of this mountain. And then my like doctor brain kicked in. I was like, well, no, if I just lie still, then my body will get some glucose. And I was like, just trying to like squeeze the dregs out of the last of that like gel packet. And I was like half hoping that some walkers would come by so they could give me some food.
That's what I was going to say. Did you have to do the inbound? I've done that many times. You don't have any. Do you have a water?
Some biscuits.
No one
have anything.
No one passed me, so unfortunately, unfortunately, I didn't. But then I imagine it crawled my way up to the top of Blencathra, and then crawled all the way down. And I'd never been down Hallsfell, and I didn't know that it was, when you're mapping, I'm looking at a map, I didn't really know that it's like a ridge.
Yeah.
And like when I was still pretty scared of heights, so I was crawling down that on my bum, half hyperglycemic, like clinging to the edge. And then I got to the bottom of the threshold, and I would have jogged back along the thing, but I was like, it's just no way. And I got a bus back. I felt really embarrassed and sheepish. I was really like, oh my God, like that is leg one. I can't, and I'm absolutely pickled. Like I couldn't even imagine it. But it's like something's like drawn me back since then to be like, it must be possible, and just been really intrigued about how it would feel to do more than that. And I guess as I've improved on the mountains, I've gotten more and more interested. But I still barely call myself a trail runner, let alone a fell runner. And fells is definitely different to trail. And I still think it's going to be very tough from that perspective for me, because I use like runnable stuff to my advantage.
Yeah.
there is very little runnable stuff in the bob, I've learned as I've gone along. Like the checkpoints is probably the checkpoints. The last
road
mile, the road bit where I'll be absolutely goosed, so I won't be able to probably even run that. We'll see.
I think it is quite an eye opener for people who maybe used to trail running at least, and then they go to say somewhere like the Bob, and there's just so much walking. It's quite frustrating. But yeah, completely different to what, say, someone, I've done the Lake 100 a few times, and there's so much running in that. But yeah, compared to the Bob and, like you say, Halsfeld Ridge, places like that. Why didn't you just go to Doddick instead? It's much more pleasant way down.
I just had that in my, like, I just didn't know, I guess, and I was already halfway down Horsefells before I realised that it was like a sketchy old ridge. I was like not in my right mind as well.
We've been asked also, do you what part of the course do you anticipate will be the hardest?
It's also hard. I'm thinking that probably leg 3 is going to be like where I'll start questioning, because that's in the middle of that will be the furthest I've ever run. Full stop. Be the most elevation I've ever run already. Beyond that, and it'll still feel a long way to home, I think. So I think if I can get to Wasdale feeling not too horrific, I think I can. I think my mind will be able to carry me, or hopefully the rest of the way if I'm on a good time. But yeah, I think that middle leg, because it's like that middle leg as well, it's very, unrunnable, especially if it's squishy underfoot, and then it's rocky, which are slippery rocks and things like that. So yeah, I think the middle leg for sure.
I think it does split. The first section is quite fell-like, and then you'll hit both fell and places like that, and then it gets really mega rocky underfoot. I mean, I struggled to recce that course just because of the either side of it. See, if you went to Wasdale, you were kind of in the middle of nowhere to get back to your car at Dunmail Race. Are you the same? Have you managed to get out on that part of the course much?
I did do like an out and back from Dunmail, and then I did an out and back from Wasdale. But it's annoying. I hate doing out and backs because you just got to trudge back the way you came. It's depressing.
Yeah.
But the last weekend, it was actually really fun. I parked at Dunmail. Oh no, I parked in Keswick, got the bus to Dunmail, and then ran to Wasdale. I carried two days of kit with me and nutrition. I stayed at the Wasdale Inn, which is really nice.
Yeah.
Cool little place, and it was really cozy. And it was a Sunday, so I had a roast. Got into my room and had a bath and dried out all my kit on the radiator. It was just me and like one other couple staying there. So because it was quite snowy and icy, so I don't think many people fancied driving down there. So yeah, I stayed there and then had a full English in the morning, and then because I wanted to get going, they only served breakfast at like 8, so I had to wait till 8. I had a full English, and I literally went straight out the door.
Oh my goodness!
Went up Barrow with like, like full English right at the top of my stomach. And then did leg 4 and 5 back to Keswick the day after.
Oh, what a recce! My goodness me, that just sounds perfect. I've been trying to visualize. I always think about doing a reverse bob and I'd like to plot the recce, and just like what you said there is exactly what I'd like to do. Just run somewhere, stay the night, and then carry on. That's perfect.
Yeah, and it's not too bad if you like. I didn't carry. It didn't like a huge heavy pack. You just need like some extra clothes.
Pair of pants, a gel, one gel for each leg.
I don't mind being a dirtbag in the lakes as well, because everyone's a bit scruffy.
Yeah, they expect it. Like, the only thing was shoes. I was like, I had my shoes I fell in the river just before I got there, annoyingly, because it was like icy, and I slipped on the rock, and so my shoes were like really squelchy. So I had to go down for dinner, like all like dry and stuff, but with squelchy shoes.
And have you decided on? There's a few you've mentioned about the various ridges off Blencathra, but are you going to do Lord's Rake, or is somebody going to be there with a rope for you to go to Scarfell?
I do Lord's Rake. I just think in the winter it's I'm not willing to take the risk. I think sort of the time I'm going for it's I don't think it'll take much more time for me to go up Lord's Rake, because I'll probably spend 10 minutes freaking out about up the other way. So I'll go up Lord's Rake. That's the way I've recce'd. It was a bit icy when I went before, but I could just about scramble like the side of it, and it was And I'll probably bring some crampons. depending
Yeah,
on-
Angela Green, another Patreon question. She asks, actually, do you think you'll need an ice axe?
Yeah, I haven't bought an ice axe. I don't know if I'd know what to do with it.
No.
I think I'd rather just, move the date somewhere, but I wouldn't. But crampons, I'll probably give to a pacer in case.
Crampons, you can get through most stuff, I reckon. We did the UTMB route a couple of years ago when it was still really snowy, and everybody kept saying, you're going to carry an ice axe. And I was like, if I have to carry an ice axe, I don't think I should be up there. For
Yeah.
I mean, crampons, I'll put those on. But the ice axe, if I'm going across something and I'm holding an ice axe, I've made a questionable life choice.
Exactly, that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if it's that deep, that icy, you can stay and finish your full English.
People are going to want to know your schedule. I think the record is 20 hours. Is that correct for the winter ladies bob?
Yeah, 21:19.
Okay.
Who's got that? Is that-
Sabrina, yeah.
So I want to get under 20 hours. The pace that I feel most natural running at, and what I've been doing on my recce pace at, is 18-hour pace, just under. But obviously my recce week was absolutely beautiful conditions. It was like no wind, it was snowy underfoot, like the bogs were frozen over. But then I was tired. I hadn't tapered for any of that, and I was carrying a bit of a hamstring niggle. And then I was carrying all my stuff. So Ellis, who I'd recce'd 1 and 2 at night with, said, you feel you're always faster on the day. But it really depends on the conditions, I think. But yeah, a sub 20, I'll be over the moon with. I can't see it being much faster than 18. So
Have you got a smoking fast crew for leg one though? Historically, leg one, you'll go out like a rocket. And if you, not that I'm to give you advice, but I've been burned big time on a leg one of a Bob Graham round. Somebody saying I think it was 20-hour pace, and they ended up doing 18-hour pace. And
really? Yeah.
I didn't even make it to Skiddaw with them. It was that fast. So yeah,
Really?
Hopefully whoever you've got leg one can do it a little bit faster than what your schedule is, just in case you go off like a rabbit.
Well, Ellis was really good at telling me, because also I try and run up everything, which is really inefficient. I know. It's just my natural thing is that if I can run up, then I will. And he was like, when I walk, you walk, and that's when you'll walk on the bob, because otherwise you're
He
going to.
sounds like a good friend.
Yeah, well, I want him to do the whole thing with me. But he's doing the arc at the end of January.
Just get him, recorded.
Yeah.
Recorded
And he's so passionate about it. I guess someone who wants to do it twice in a row you must be. But yeah, so that was really helpful, because then I started getting the hang of it. I was like, oh, this gradient, I need to walk. And then it felt less stressful. I was like, oh, this is actually quite nice. And I feel like it's manageable.
Well, it means you can eat as well if you just take that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to run uphill and smash
Yeah.
hills in your face.
It's like you just get yourself tired. And then when you start walking, you're walking really badly because you're tired because you tried to run for too long. And then just other simple things, like he was saying, to keep my heel flat when I can sometimes, to save the calves later on. So, because I'm very toe strikey. So he said, by the time you get to U-Barrow, that'll start to feel that if you don't plant your foot sometimes all the way down. So yeah, just little tips like that have been really, really handy.
Will you have poles?
No.
No poles.
No. I'm trying. I know that it's a controversial thing, but to be honest, I don't really. I barely have enough time to train for the bob, let alone learn how to use poles. My arms are so weak. I'd just use way too much energy using poles. Sometimes I feel like I really want them when I'm going up the hill, but yeah.
I was thinking more along the ice.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
I'm not too sure if it's especially the distance and the amount of time you're out. I think I didn't use poles on my attempt and my successful attempt.
Yeah.
I didn't
Did
use
you feel
poles.
like you wanted them, or what's your opinion of them?
Well, at Little 100, I think I really enjoyed using them on that. And Little 100 was slightly longer for me than the Bob Graham. When I needed that 3 points of contact, the poles would have been really frustrating. I like to grab onto them. So I personally, I didn't need them for the Bob Graham. But maybe I would say one of the runners, maybe if they don't mind carrying a set, just in case you feel like. But then if you never use them, I definitely wouldn't use them. Going on to this. Oh, that was really interesting what Ellis was saying about saving your calves for later on. But have you thought about your footwear?
I have, yeah. So North Face are actually making a prototype shoe for me, just because their shoes have been previously just for European trails really, but they are obviously looking to expand to suit more UK trail and UK market. So it's been nice for them to get some feedback on what works and what doesn't in the fells. Because a lot of their shoes have got quite high stack height, which obviously if you're going down really steep stuff, you need the ankle stability. So it's a kind of a mixture of the shoes that are already there plus some bigger lugs. It's
interesting
knowing like how big the lugs to be, because some rocky sections, boggy sections. But I thought overall I want to have that kind of reassurance with the bigger lugs. I've gone for like a 7mm lug, and like it'll have like, I don't know that you've seen the Flight Guard. It's probably the most similar to the Flight Guard shoe, which is their winter shoe, which has got like the gaiter over it, but it will be like a lower stack and high and big lugs. I haven't actually. I should get the final Proto this week and break that in.
Are those the shoes that you keep spamming me with, Iddy?
Yeah, I love them. That's what I'm wearing. That's what I'm wearing for the spine. I
Flight
love their Yeah, I love their trainers, and I tell you, this is so sad. This is so sad. But when I watched Katie Scheid run the UTMB, I was like, she looks so bouncy and like fresh. And I was like, what trainers has she got on? And then I was like, I'm going to try. I totally bought into the North Face branding. I was like, I'm going to try them. I want to try them. And they are the best shoes I've ever worn on trails. I love them. They are bouncy, but the grip is amazing. I wore the same pair all summer. They're still going. The lugs are slightly worn down to it. Never slipped. Never felt. And then I don't know which ones they are.
Like, because I think the ones at Kate, because they've got even better ones.
Hers were prototype, I think. So I got like, I did do a lot of zooming in on pictures to go.
Yeah. I was just going to say that I wore those as well, the Flight Pros that she has, which will be out in spring next year. And
I think what us normal people could buy like less than the next version down, whatever that was.
Like that.
I'll get it now.
Yeah, show me. But yeah, I'd say that they're very similar to I would call them the Vaporflies of the trail. Even when I wear them on road, they feel fast and bouncy. And they've got a surprising amount of like stability on descents, because that was what I was worried about. The high stack is that you lose that stability going down, but they've got a special mechanism, I believe, which I'm not really supposed to say much about, but I do love them. But for the UK trails, sometimes you need that a little bit more grip, which I think they're getting. I
hope that's success with it. I think Hawker had a pair of what they would say maybe classed as fell shoes, but because their market didn't really buy that shoe, then they didn't really they stopped producing it. It only lasted one year. So fingers crossed, North Face gets some success with that shoe, and then it justifies kind of redeveloping it for future years. Have you decided on Newlands Valley? A lot of people put some road shoes on for that last 5 miles.
Oh yeah. No, I won't be putting Vaporflies on. Maybe I'll put the Pro on, the one that Katie was wearing in the UTMB. Oh yeah. Yeah, with the cool pattern on.
Cool. Cool. Actually, looking at it now, there's not much.
They're like road shoes.
Yeah. As you said, they were the closest to road shoes you can get, but also I could still like fly downhill in them.
Yeah,
you're right. There's something about the ankle support, but it was I love the fact that it must be. I can't think it's that good for you because there's no support, but I loved that.
Yeah, I haven't had any problems with injuries or anything.
No, I had no injuries. And then this.
Yeah, if you like those, you definitely like the Pros. Oh yeah, this is what I wore the other night with Ellis. Yeah.
I love them. So, and the grip I found, I've done half the Pennine Way in them with waterproof Stockton on, and the grip. Okay, I went flying once, but that's because I was running so fast on the slabs trying to keep up with the boys, and they stopped suddenly, and I just went into their backside.
It's a good meet in the middle for grip on mud and rock, because they're quite good on.
Exactly. Rock. There's a nice meet in the middle. They kept them dry. I've worn them for a week, like 30 hours, and nothing, no blisters.
Yeah, it was one of the reasons I joined North Face, is that it's kind of more organic because I already wore their shoes, and my friend noticed and he kind of worked for them, and they approached me because they knew that I liked their shoes. because it's what I chose. It was my chosen race shoe before I joined anybody.
Oh, I love
Oh,
that.
brilliant.
I love that you were like, you liked the shoe already up, and that it wasn't something you had to cram your foot in. And then the year later they go on about it for a year and then change and go a year later. It's nice. I think North Face tend to keep hold of their athletes for a little while, don't they? They build a good relationship.
Yeah.
Right, let's go back. We've digressed, and we
Oh, sorry.
excited about the trainers.
My 2 attempts or Bob Graham round, there was a lot of chat about start times and why we'd start at a certain time. I believe you're about 11 o'clock, is that right?
Yeah, between 10 and 11. It's deciding whether it's like backing myself and saying that I will finish in 18 hours. And
Do it.
I don't want to do too. I don't want to like have the dark stuff done and dusted and be like, that's it now, unless maybe a little bit of dusk on the road. So yeah, about 11, get the leg 1 and 2 done in the dark, which I now have done, so I know that I can do. So that psychological feels really good. And then probably sun will be rising over leg 3 when you start to need it a little bit. And then from there on, just know that you've mostly got light left. I think just psychologically that'd be good. And it's nice finishing it. Hopefully, like what would it be? Like 4
tea time for chips.
Yeah.
Is there a particular leg that you're looking forward to?
Leg 5. Because I think when I get to Hollister, I'll know how much time I've got to play with, and I think obviously you can't underestimate that leg, but it's fairly runnable. The fell part of that is fairly runnable, / it's not too taxing. You've got all of the really big, nasty climbs done. So I think,
still quite undulating, isn't it? Leg 5. There's a little bump.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nothing.
Dale Head is it's a mile. Basically, it's a mile uphill from Honester to Dale Head Summit. Pretty much, I think it's exactly a mile.
The gradient isn't too crazy. The other gradient coming out of the checkpoint is like, 60%.
Still fell in Newbarrow. Horrible.
Yeah.
I always thought with the reverse bob, when you're going up Seat Sandal and then Fairfield straight away, that would be horrendous.
Yeah. Just doing that the other night, like going up Fairfield, like Ellis always says, everyone just hates it because it's just like you feel like just like binning it off.
Your butt cheeks must be burning by then.
So one last question. Sorry, which way would you do Robinson? There's the Trod, which is more the fell side, or you can kind of keep the path. Have you decided on that?
I think I've done both, but I was following Killian Journet's GPS the last few times, so whatever he did.
I think he went wide.
Yeah, I think that he was on the path because I was kind of like, I went the ladder way before. Is this the right way? The most runnable part probably is best for me. So
that's it for the Bob Graham interrogation.
And I didn't answer your question about why a winter round.
Sorry, yeah.
And I guess the main reason is that obviously, like, I'm still into the shorter races, and I don't know how long this is going to pickle me for. So it was.
I'm in a little pickle. I think I'll feel the same after the Spine.
Yeah.
We're in a little pickle for a few months.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already pickled after last week's training, so the actual attempts, God knows how long it'll take me. I might be able to salvage some sort of mountain season afterwards, but we'll see. But doing it in the middle of a mountain running, like racing season, would have been really tough. Plus, Beth Pascal's time is just mind-blowing, eye-watering fast. Like when I look at, obviously in Strava, you see splits, and I'm just like, whoa, like I can't even. I probably wouldn't even be able to keep it up with her on a leg in the summer. Like it's just like. The more I do it, the more impressed. I was already impressed, but the more I do it, the more impressed with her round. It's just crazy, and I just like the extra element of things to think about and challenge. It sounds weird, but I like the suffering side of running in a like really bizarre way. And just like because in between that you get like slithers of like amazing experiences. Like the other night running with Ellis under the shooting stars was just it was such a tough night because I was so tired already from the week's training, but it was just so magical in other ways. And then you have less people out on the fells.
That is that. And there's such a satisfaction in the winter about the coming home.
Yes.
You've been like so cold, no one else is out, and it's dusk, and you come home and it's all cozy, and as well around the festive period, the choice of snacks post run are incredible.
Mince pies and things like that.
Mince pies.
Yeah, you appreciate things a lot more. Like after spending a week in my van at -10, like it's like now I'm like you get back and you have a bath and you're like, oh my God, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Just like I had to keep the water inside my sleeping bag so I could even make a cup of tea in the morning because it would freeze outside otherwise. Just being able to go downstairs and put the kettle on makes you appreciate the little thing.
I do love a big adventure. You've been up in the mountains and then all of life has gone on below you. The markets have been erected and everyone's bought their goods and they're put down again. Everyone's life has just gone on and you've just been having fun in isolation.
Or crying.
Or crying,
We don't know what it means. I don't know if we've got time for this, but did have a horrific experience in my training the other week and probably like I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but also I want to speak about it because I think it might help other people in not getting the same pickle as me. So basically a few weeks ago I went out to do leg 4 from Wasdale. I drove to Wasdale from Stockport, like a 3-hour drive. And it was like 5 in the evening, so it was dark. I had a new head torch I'd never used before. Didn't read instructions properly, just was in a rush. It was raining, very windy. But I thought, I didn't think much probably. I just don't know what I was thinking. And yeah, just headed out on my own, having only run it a little bit in the lights parts of it. I'd never been out to Steeple, didn't know what Steeple was like until I went back.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I was having a great time. I was like, yeah, it's bad weather, but I've got all the right kit. I've got all my safety equipment. I feel safer than in Manchester, it's like,
yeah.
I was like perfectly happy. And then boom, like an hour and a half in, my head torch just went out and I was at the top of, I was heading to Steeple from Red Pike because I was in between the two.
Yeah, I get you.
So, and it honestly was so dark because there was no like moonlight. I was in a cloud, so it felt like my eyes were closed, honestly. And I was like, I've never known darkness like it in my life. I tried to stay calm, but obviously then I stopped, took my gloves off to get into my bag, like went to get my second head torch, which was a really old one, which I hadn't used for a long time. It was I think I just had it in there as a token, rather than thinking about, does this really work?
Yeah.
Put it on and it was like, it was almost just like a pen torch. I couldn't see anything burning my hand from like hot. It was, and then I started panicking. I had my phone. Luckily, it was in that very one spot because Wasdale's like got no signal anywhere.
Oh, it's terrible, yeah.
Top of Red Pike.
Yeah.
There was some signal, so I put like my iPhone torch on, which luckily had a bit more light than my smaller one. But I was worried because it was raining. I was like, if I lose this phone now, if I drop it or if they get like water damage, I've got nothing. I'm just stuck here in the dark. It was -5 wind chill. I was starting to get cold because I'd stopped taking my gloves off. Rang my wife Sarah. She didn't pick up the first time. She was out running herself. Then she rang back, and by that point I was panicking, going around in circles trying to find. I'd lost the path as well, and when I've been back to Red Pike, I didn't know that there's a sheer drop off the side of it as well. So I was like,
yeah, it's very exposed. Yeah.
On my Strava, I was like going around and around in circles, just panicking, just thinking, like, what am I going to do here? Luckily, Sarah called back in a few minutes, and then I was like, I was in like an absolute state. I was like crying. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like I'm getting cold. I was just like panicking, and then she's obviously you're not used to hearing me like that, and started getting worried. She was like, "Do you want me to call mountain rescue?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're going to have to. Like, if I lose my phone, there's nothing." I can't see a single thing. I'd have to crawl back wherever.
Wow, this is.
Then
We know she survives, Gary, because she's here, but I'm not sure how we're getting to that bit.
So I was like 3.5 miles in, and I was like, I can either go back along the ridge and down, but that's quite a long way, and then that's all exposed, and I'm already getting cold. Or I can go. I looked at my map, and I was like, there's a small gap for about a mile down. If I cut off Steeple and cut down towards Pillar, and then there's a gap next to Pillar to get back to Wasdale, which I saw on the map. So I went that way, but lost the path again and was like climbing over these boulders, like trying to like see with my torch if there was a sheer drop. I was just like, I don't know, I was like really getting really cold as well because I wasn't being able to move very fast because with an iPhone I couldn't see that well really. And then I eventually found this gap, by which point I dropped off because I had a tracker on, so Sarah could see where I was on GPS, because I always share that with her when I go out in the mountains.
Okay.
It only works if you got signal. So then I dropped out signal, and all she could see that I dropped off the side of a cliff.
Oh God.
She thought that because she couldn't hear me because it was so windy, and I was panicking, and I didn't want to stay on my phone because I was just like in a mess. I hadn't explained to her my plan. I was just like, I just stopped answering my phone. And all she had was like the GPX file where she could see where I was meant to be going, and she saw me going off it. So yeah, I dropped off. But then once I got down, and then I dropped down, it was about 1,800 foot descent in a mile. I saw on my Strava afterwards, down this scree slope. And I was just flying down there, like terrified. My phone kept flying out my hand. My other head torch flew out my hand. I lost that on the way. I smashed my finger. I think I broke like the tip of it. I've got like a little bruise only left. And I eventually made it down to Wasdale, head in like an hour and a half later. Because once I dropped down into Valley, I stopped panicking because I wasn't as cold. I think the fact that I was getting cold, I was just getting
so frightening.
I had like a survival blanket, and I had like all the spare kit and stuff, but I still was like, what, this is really hairy, and I didn't, it was a really silly thing to do. So yeah, bustled into Wasdale, head in. Everyone was like having a nice evening. Fine. I was just thinking about you saying everyone's just beginning about their business. Yeah. And I was just been to Helen back, and I obviously went to ask to use her phone because I had no signal still, and I knew Sarah would be panicking. So I rang her, and obviously she was like, she'd been mobilizing some of her like colleagues to try and help her get down for the rescue. And just as I got there, the mountain rescue turned up. So yeah, I'm just like, I've learned really about safety equipment, and that it's not just for show. It actually needs to work if you're going to have it, and like having a spare head torch if it's no use. And also, I think probably the power of just not really going out on your own, especially somewhere that's so unfamiliar, and things can change so quickly. Because if I'd been with someone else, it would have been no problem at all, because you just like, they'd help you get down and things like that. And just like, oh my God, massively thankful to the mountain rescue team, like on a Saturday night being dragged out in like windy, rainy
and they're
conditions.
like, you'll never guess who it was. It was that North Face athlete as well. You need a petrol sponsor.
It's awesome to know they're there, though. My goodness me. But I'm quite optimistic. We do with the kit checks and everything, spare batteries for your torch, and like you said, it's sometimes just a token gesture. You've done it, you've ticked the box. But yeah, when you need it, wow, you really need it. I remember on somebody's Bob Graham round, I never ran with it ever, and I packed a Primaloft jacket, and because we moved so slow, it was just a lifesaver. I was really super cool. I've never ever used it, but that day it really saved my bacon. Yeah,
it's definitely worth that few extra grams carrying stuff especially if you're training and that. It's
I bet that's changed. That's a horrible experience. We're so happy that you made it out. But I bet that will have changed. Like, people listening will always now think of that story when they're heading out. 2 head torches, both fully charged and spare batteries. But also, it's probably will have changed your thoughts as well, Elsey. Forever now, you'll never ever be complacent about a head torch.
I think it makes me understand why people get so safety conscious. And sometimes things like that have to happen for you to be like that. Like, until you've been in that experience, felt like I could have died there. Like, could have gone off the side, could have got exposure. Yeah, it's really frightening to think. It gives me.
I see it all the time here. I'm out in the mountains every day, and people coming down with that avalanche kit on, all by themselves, no kit on, and I'm like, it looks beautiful, but it's so dangerous, and you should never go out by yourself unless. I mean, I just think going backcountry skiing by yourself, you should just never do, however experienced you are. And I would never ski off-piste without avalanche kitting, because you're asking for other people to then risk their lives to come and save you. That's the biggest thing. That's what I always want to do. I don't want to look like a pillock.
Yeah.
And be like, well, why have you not got your avalanche transceiver turned on? And be like, well, I didn't know how to do it. or I didn't bother because,
You
complacency.
just think, oh, it won't happen to me.
Let's move on to happier thoughts. After the Bob Graham, when you're over being pickled and recovered, have you got plans for 2023 yet, or ready to share, or not have to share? You don't have to share with us.
Yeah, so I've got a rough plan, just depending on how I feel when I feel ready to race again. I'd like to give the Golden Trail Series another go. So I think they've just released their races, most of the classic ones again, like Sierre-Zinal, Mont Blanc Marathon, Zagama. Zagama was one I missed last year, which I was really gutted.
That's the one I was thinking of. Zagama.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, you do well at that because they're running up all those climbs.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd have to get used to running again up hills after this. And yeah, I think so for top 10 at the Worlds, I get auto selection for the Worlds again next year, which is June.
And that's in Austria. Why did I think that was in Switzerland? Maybe it's really close.
It's in Innsbruck, which is Austria.
Innsbruck. Okay. Yeah, Austria. Yeah.
And then probably OCC again.
I was wondering if you're going to CCC it. OCC.
One more year of short stuff, and then I think we'll start going.
I like that. It's fine. Keep going while you've got your hamstrings, honestly.
All eyes on the Bob, and then think about that.
All eyes on the prize. Will you have a tracker on the day?
You might get one of those, Elsey.
What's that? I can't see it.
You get your little certificates at the dinner.
Nice. That will be pride of place.
We're such losers, Gary. I've shown Elsey my trainers and gone, look, trainers, and you showed
I just showed you my cat.
Yay!
Yeah, we're all in the same place. We've got one last question for our Patreon member, Jonathan Jameson, for you, Elsey, before we jump into the quick five. How do you switch between marathon distance on the road and trail and mountain running? And I kind of think you've almost answered this in the fact that it's been quite a slow process and you've just sort of organically gone from roads to trail. Has there been any sort of secrets of training or of your success, or has it just been a sort of patience over the last few years?
Yeah, patience and just advice from other people. Like, I actually probably the best advice I'd had is from Jonathan Albon's app, and I use that a lot actually to guide me to know what to do on the mountains. It's probably quite a lot to explain on this, but it's worth it. You can download it for a week.
Yeah,
I'm not sponsored by it.
I use it a lot as well.
Yeah, it's got some great ideas on there, and you don't have to stick to it all. And there is, especially the leg conditioning stuff on there, I'd recommend downloading it. It's free to download for a week.
Did it give you the worst DOMs in the world, the leg conditioning, when you first?
Well, I did just the uphill stuff, like the bounding in the fast feet.
Love those,
because that's the thing that I'm worse at, and I feel that really has helped my uphill running.
Me too. Yeah, I definitely that changed the way I could run uphill.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's learnt from Killian as well. Like John will say that himself. So yeah, I mean, if Killian does it, then surely it must work.
Yeah, so if you are looking for tips, if you're a road runner, you're looking for training, John and his wife made a really good app, and you can. I don't think it's super expensive either, and you can
like £20 a month.
Yeah, it's really great, and it's got you don't have to then follow it for ages, but you can have a little dip in and look at. It's got loads and loads of different sessions, and you can choose if you want to cross train, but it's got really good mountain and hill running sessions as well. Yeah, and like little videos and exercises you can follow along, and as Elsey said, like it's all come from the real what they're really doing on the mountains. Yeah. It's hard work. It's really beasting sessions, but if you're sort of committed to, especially the shorter distance stuff as well, I think getting that elasticity in your muscles. And it looks like you haven't had perhaps the injuries that you've had that you did have in road running. And would you put that down to trail running? Not so much the impact.
Yeah, definitely. And just managing it with cross training, not being afraid to cut the miles, and more like focusing time on feet rather than the distance you run that week. And if you're feeling tired,
it must be good being in North Face as well, because so many of the athletes are multi-sport athletes as well. Like nearly all the runners are skiers as well, aren't they? So I feel that you're like, if you're biking or whatever, that it's sort of like that's what everybody does, and that off season or it's recovery. It's not just about run.
Yeah. Giving your legs a break at some point of the year is really good.
Healthy exposure. Legs a break with a quick win to Bob Graham.
It's mostly hiking. It's cross training, so it's
It's like the spine. It's mainly hiking.
it's a big old hike.
Just a winter jolly.
Right, Jonathan Zink, last one from our Patreon members. He asked, is there any sibling rivalry in the Davis house? You've got some super fast siblings.
Yeah, but I'm the fastest marathoner still, so so yeah, my older sister has run a 2:39 marathon. My youngest sister has also just run a 2:39 marathon. I'm actually not sure what the seconds were between those, what the ranking is there, but and then my sister just below, I've got three sisters just below me, has run a 3:30 marathon.
Oh my goodness me.
Yeah, it's
muscles in those legs. And your dad's pretty fast as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he ran a sub-3 at 60. And he ran Valencia the other week in 3:30 after a rocky build-up. So yeah, he's the one who got us all into it, and
he must be proud. Around that Christmas lunch, he must be like, look what I've created, my own little marathon team. You need to go and do some marathons where it's like a team prize.
Yeah, like London you can do with the team. So it's just getting us all there, because we're not all having babies, because I'm not, but two of my sisters just have babies, and we're getting to that age now where it gets hard to line it all up. But yeah, my older sister does like a lot of trail running as well, but she's done kind of the longer stuff.
She's doing the arc this year, isn't she?
She is, yeah.
50 or the 100.
50, yeah. My little boy's one.
I'm gonna get her on afterwards. A few weeks later, and go, any sibling rivalry? She's gonna go,
yeah. She won't run with me. I don't. It's like a weird thing. We're slowly starting to run with each other, but since I don't know, it's like Dad used to have to go for individual runs sometimes he goes for 4 runs a day, because we were like, no, I don't want to run with them. No, I don't want to.
That is so funny. But it's a bit like my kids, that if they go and do running for their ski training, they won't want to go together because they'll just end up fighting. Right, let's finish with a quick 5.
What dish, if Eddie and I were to come around for dinner, what dish would be your signature dish? What would you rustle up for us?
I don't know why it just came to my mind, but I just thought of Weetabix, because that's all I eat. But I wouldn't make it for you.
We don't mind. We're great. Maybe with a bit of honey or something, or like a bit of yogurt topping,
some seeds on, some berries. Yeah.
Very easy. Very easy.
I'd probably just make you steak, because it's just easy and quick, and
I'd have 2 steaks then.
I'm a heady vegetarian. I'd have the Weetabix. I'd have you Weetabix.
Oh yeah, I'd give you Weetabix then. Weetabix and broccoli. I eat a lot of broccoli, so whatever you have will be with broccoli.
Oh, I love a bit of broccoli.
They do a bizarre gift at Valencia Marathon at the end. In your goodies bag, you get some broccoli.
Yeah, my dad said that.
Really bizarre.
Valencia, the home of broccoli?
Well, I've got no idea. Oranges, I thought. They would do a mean orange in Valencia. When are you most productive? What part of the day?
Morning. Well, late morning.
Is that after a coffee or a tea?
A cup of tea, my porridge, read my book for an hour, scroll through Instagram for another hour.
Oh my gosh, that's the life of
This is full-time athlete. Like, I probably only get going at about 11, so...
Might go and do a session, see what the app brings up. Oh, don't like that, change that. I'll just do another recovery day.
Yeah, recovery run.
And do you have a favourite number? And if you do, why?
No. I just don't.
Just you, Eddie?
It's just me. I went off on diatribe about this one and my favourite number and why and the whole story.
Favourite number? I've never
so dull. My story's when you get your race number, don't you like it to be like even numbers rather than odd numbers?
No, I don't have any.
I never think about that.
What's yours?
So dull, honestly. It's not even worth sharing.
It is. It was a good story. All right, moving on. Best
number
Christmas...
one.
Number one.
Yeah, you are. Number one in the family, number one. That's what I'd say to my sisters too.
Best Christmas present memory.
Well, my dad bought me and Sarah a cookery course last year. And it was for making Thai food. And that was really good.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Little branch out from the Weetabix.
Yeah.
You didn't offer to cook us any Thai food. It obviously wasn't that great cookery course.
Oh, yeah. And I wouldn't be able to recreate it. It was too complicated, but I enjoyed eating it. Yeah, I like gifts that are like, like experiences. Yeah.
What about yourself, Eddie? Got any memories?
I got a Sylvanian family house once. That was incredible.
Oh, yeah,
Christmas.
that'd be sick.
And a pen that went round the neck. You know, it had a string, and then you could unscrew the lid, and then you could put a pound coin inside.
Awesome. I love stuff like
And my mum and dad had put a pound coin
that.
inside.
Yay.
It's great. That sounds like something I need at work, like on the wards. It's like,
Yeah, and then always got the pound for the vending machine.
yeah, exactly. And the pen for writing on the notes.
A telephone call or WhatsApp?
WhatsApp. Oh God, no. Phone calls give me. Yeah, I
Phone
can't.
calls are if you've lost the light and the will to live.
If I have to ring someone, I feel anxious about it all day. I'd rather text them.
Or
Yeah.
if I have to ring my husband when I'm out running, I start the conversation with "all is fine, all is fine, all is
Yeah.
fine," because you just never call anyone, do you?
That would be me now from forevermore.
Yeah.
Whenever
You've got some bridges to build.
Well, cool. That's everything from me. Best of luck, Elsey. And yeah, if any of our listeners think they can be of help, reach out to us. Or Elsey, what would be the best way to through Instagram or any other?
yeah,
way?
just message me on Instagram. It's fine.
Slide into her DMs. That's what we
Yeah.
do every few months. Give us a call. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We've loved catching up. Best of luck with the Bog Brim.
Thank
We're
you.
praying for you. Charge that head torch and
Yeah. I don't want to hear about any more stories like that, Elsey. This time next year, no more head torch stories.
we fully sponsored. Petzl will have given her 24 head torches. We'll tag Petzl in. Yeah, best of luck and have a lovely, happy Christmas to you.
Yeah, all the
and
best.
everybody down in Cornwall
And the world.
and
Yeah.
the world.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Super exciting. Thanks so much, Elsey, for coming on the show. Best of luck with the Bog Round. We will let all our listeners know how you get on. And if you're interested, pop over and follow her on Instagram. She's an avid content maker.
It's good content too. It's quite inspirational. And yeah, if you think you can help out, reach out to us or Elsey. I'm sure she did say she got some good support, but you know, last minute things. I think she got a weather window of a couple of days, so it just might not fit for somebody. So anybody who thinks they can help out around that, I think 20 hours, she said, is the record. But on a good day, it might be a bit quicker than that. So yeah, get in touch if you think you can help. Tales for the Trails is an opportunity for you to share your stories. It's open to everybody. Funny, inspirational, random acts of kindness, anything goes. Email hello@tntrails.com and pop in the subject bar, Tales from the Trails. Well, we've still not had any emails in as far as Tales from the Trails go. So I went scouring Facebook to see if I could find some stuff worth sharing. And I did. You guys have been really busy. First off is Glenn Davies. Now, he had a successful supported FKT out and back record on the Worcestershire Way. That's 50k, 1,625 metres, and he did that in 15 hours, 33 minutes and 48 seconds. Amazing. That is amazing to get an FKT. Well done, Glenn. Next up is Susan Chambers. She completed her 100th marathon and she picked a belt at Harbmore's Rosebery Marathon. It's one I've done a few times. It's such a great race. Yeah, Susan, it looks super icy out there. I hope you managed to stay on your feet. And then down to Jamie Sowerbury Steele. He completed at the same race. He completed his 1,000th Hardmoors mile. That is some going, Jamie. Amazing. And it's awesome that the Hardmoors guys recognise such milestones. Last but not least is Carmine de Grandis. Apologies, Carmine, if I managed to mess your name up, but he has been out with his accordion and his beautiful dog, Norman. I met both of them at the start of Tour de Helvellyn. So it was really, such a lovely treat to see them both there. And he's been raising money for Climbers Against Cancer and Mountain Rescue. And I'm pretty sure they're still raising funds. And he shared a post in our Facebook group too. So yeah, check that out if you'd like to donate. Well done, everybody. And yeah, if you don't email in, then I might go hunting for some good news stories that are worth sharing. But please do email in with your own tales from the trails, or give a friend a shout out. If they've done something worth celebrating and they are a bit modest to email in themselves, then yeah, just get in touch.
What does your Christmas look like, Gary? Are you up at 4?
I'd love a lion, but that's not going to happen. Luckily my children are a bit old.
Kids are a bit older now. They're not going to get up.
Teenagers. I'll be dragging them. I'll be the one that's getting everyone out of bed. But for me, Christmas is just family time. George is my son's last day today. My daughter's already broke up. She's she's in France on a school trip, which was quite good. And it's awesome now, technology with Find My Phone. We were being the worried parents and stalking where she was at. Couldn't wait until she was back in the UK because she turned her goddamn data off. So she was in Calais for ages and we were like really stressing out. But all is well. She's back in England. Had a sleepover with the friends last night. So I'll see Esme later on today. I'm leading a trail run. Central Harry's do like a 12-day of Christmas, all these organised events. So I'm leading a run down my favourite nature reserve, Castle Eden Dean, on the 23rd, I think it is. So, and just lots of family time. Nothing structured as far as running's concerned. I'll be out with dog, with Rex, doing a few miles. But I'm just really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to Christmas Day as well. Everyone being present. That's what I like. It'd be nice. What about yourself?
Yeah, much the same.
You're off for a 6-hour run.
Roger. Not on Christmas Day. I've got to fit in one more big run this week at some point because it gets closer. And like next week, I'm like, I don't want to do anything after next week. Well, I probably won't go over 4 hours again. So I think probably on Christmas Eve. The kids are skiing up until 4:30 on Christmas Eve.
Goodness me.
I know. Hardcore, and then we pick them up and we go down into town and Father Christmas skis down the piste.
Ooh.
We always think Father Christmas has had a few band shows by the time he arrives. And they do like little torchlit descent, all the ski instructors, and we have band show and crepes and there's an ice rink and sort of like light show, very French.
That sounds wonderful.
And then we tend to, Christmas Day is their day off. So we'd like to go skiing, but the kids are like,
nope.
No. So we will have a lovely family day and kids do their stockings in the morning. And then, what we do? We go to church and then we don't open our presents until the afternoon.
Oh, goodness me.
We make it last.
Your poor children.
So they have had their stockings in the morning. And then we normally, if it's snowy, we go carry the sledges up the lap I've done 900 times. And there's a little refuge up there where you can get hot chocolate. We get hot chocolate and then we do the sledge of death all the way down. And there's always sledge rage. Somebody falls over and then we come back and then we'll have a massive Christmas feast. I've started mentioning nut roast bread because I like a really complicated one with loads of different nuts and a like cranberry layer and everything.
Ooh.
I'm not making it. So I'm like, come on, chop, get in the kitchen. I will use Christmas as a time. Eat lots of calories. Yeah, lots of quiet family time. Definitely going to watch Elf, one of my Christmas faves.
Oh, all-time best Christmas movie. Yeah.
Snowman is up there. What else?
I watched, it's not a traditional Christmas movie, but we watched Christmas Chronicles with Kirk Russell.
Oh, I guess.
The first one's really good, actually.
The first one's really good, then, so, like all Netflix things. I did want to watch Love Actually. I was telling the kids about the dancing in it, and then I remembered a few scenes, and I was like, no.
None of these movies date that well.
We did watch last year we watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and that is a good one. Anything. I think we'll go for Elf.
Home Alone, another one.
We put a shout out last week for some reviews, and then I actually went on the review page. I think we had like 20.
Oh, I know. We had loads of reviews.
We'd done badly there, Gary. We'd said to listeners, come on, 5-star reviews, and there was already 26. So
I know.
We doubted you. We apologise. And there were some great reviews. Shall we pick a couple to read out?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, you go first.
I know which one I'm scrolling down because Gary's pasted them all in the spreadsheet. Where is it? Here we are. From Fascoschimo. Return of the King and Queen of Running Podcasts. And they're back. Best podcast team ever. Have missed the chat, jokes, and all the trail running tips and tales. Will be recommending to all and sundry. The King and Queen, that's how I like to be known, Gary.
That's 2 reviews we've had from Pasquimo, so that is super generous.
Yes, I remember that name. What do you want to pick one too? Oh,
Yeah.
I really the one above. I love that one too.
Yeah, I'm going to go for failed and fell. It's quite a lot of text, so hopefully I don't fluff this
Oh,
up.
don't do it.
But on the third paragraph, that was quite funny because Eddie and Gary, but good job they punctuated that, because it could be Eddie and Gary never change, but actually it's never change. Yeah, the sequel that everybody wanted. Eddie and Gary are well known and much loved in the running podcast world. I stumbled across their previous podcast while returning to running and was immediately hooked on their conversational, open, and human approach to interviews. I think I'm quoting a previous review here, but it's like sitting down for a cup of tea with two mates who talk equal parts nonsense and running. It's what
Especially
you
today, so much nonsense. An hour of nonsense.
There's a couple of nuggets of bit of advice. It's what you need playing when on a long run. It's it's right. When I listen to podcasts, I've mentioned it before, quite often it's just a bit of company. It's there is some podcasts to listen to for some knowledge, but there's other podcasts that
You're so good at that, because I do not want any knowledge. On my podcast, I just want company. And also I invest in the people that I'm listening to. I feel like I know, like they talk about other stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that a few months ago. Oh, I'm glad so-and-so's feeling better.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, when the previous podcast ended, I honestly felt like the community had lost a real asset. It was something I genuinely look forward to each week. I was utterly thrilled to see this new podcast with both of them, Eddie and Gary. Never change. You're both wonderful. Keep up the oversharing. We've not done any of that for a while. Keep up talking nonsense and keep up being such positive role models for this community and reminding everyone that running is inclusive, open to everyone, and most importantly, a lot of fun. Thank you. Oh my goodness me. What a review. Thanks so much, everybody.
And also excellent punctuation. If you do like the podcast, please pop over to Spotify, iTunes, give us a rating. It helps the podcast be, if you're then looking for a new podcast, it helps it flash up when you're looking for a bit of company on your long run, as well as going over to Facebook, follow us on Instagram, join our Strava club. And if you feel like giving us a little Christmas gift, you could become a patron, which will just help support the show going into 2023 as well. Many thanks, everybody, for all your support in the first few of these episodes. We hope everybody has a lovely Christmas and a happy new year. If you're on your own, we hope we've given you a bit of company. We hope don't worry too much. Lots of stressy people about fitting in their runs around Christmas. Now's the time to relax and start January refreshed rather than exhausted. So if you miss your runs or you're tired or you need to spend time with your family, just relax and enjoy it. It's a very special time of year and it goes so quickly.
I 100% agree. Hope you have a great week. Run well, run wise, refuel with tea and coffee. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I've got to say thanks to Rex. This has been the quietest he's been.
So good. He hasn't been out for his morning walk.
He wouldn't go in the garden. Goddamn plonker. I'm like, Rex, go out. At least go to the toilet. But
kind of like that too. They're like, no, we're waiting for the walk. I'm like, the walk isn't coming quite yet. That's fine, we'll wait. Anyway, I'm Eddie Sutton.
And I'm Gary Thwaites.
And that was episode 3 of Tea and Trails.